Hello and welcome. Well, it's been a heated week of climate discussion with leaders meeting and targets being set. But is it enough to get these stats back on track? We'll unpack the latest from the climate crisis right here on Ticket Climate, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Ticket Climate. My name's Holly Stearns and it's great to have you tuning in every single week for this important and ongoing discussion. On Ticket Climate, we tackle the climate crisis facing our planet and we examine what actions and governments and corporations are taking at the moment. Now, my co-host Scott Hamilton is a climate change and energy expert and he joins me now. Scott, lovely to see you. What are we chatting about on today's program?
Hello, Holly, again. Yes, look, it's really huge week in climate politics and the climate wars in Australia are alive and well. So we're going to talk about them and dissect what is happening. And also the Smart Energy Council is holding a global Race to Zero summit, which involves world leaders all talking about what needs to be done to get to zero emissions as quickly as possible. It's going to be a great episode.
Exciting stuff, and I'm glad to introduce the Chief Executive of the Smart Energy Council, John Grimes, who joins us today to dissect current climate conversations and preview the Global Race to Zero Summit, which is being held this week. Now, the Smart Energy Council is the independent not-for-profit body for the Australian smart energy industry. Welcome to you, John. Lovely to have your company.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly.
Lovely to have your company. Now, before we get into the summit and everything happening, we have got to talk about the National Party in Australia and the debate on the net zero by 2050 target. Now, the Morrison government doesn't appear to have finalised its climate policy. Where do you think they will land a final decision, John?
Well, it looks like this government is being dragged kicking and screaming. It's literally 2 minutes to midnight. And the Morrison government has not yet finalised a position. We're seeing this drama play out in Parliament House with the National Party essentially holding the nation to ransom on this issue. Look, I think that ultimately they will get to a net zero position by 2050. I think that is the bare minimum that the government could do in the light up to just be part of the global international community on this issue. But the problem is Australians know, the world knows, that the Morrison's government's soul and heart is not in bold action on climate. It's actually on try to stop the change and lock in, the vested interests, coal, fossil gas, and to try and extract as many concessions as possible. Checkbook diplomacy for the rural sector in every area, and that's disappointing, I think, for everybody who just knows that we've got to get on with it. We're going to have a strong 2030 target, at least 50% by 2030, and we can't leave it to 2049 without legislation and without a plan.
Scott, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We know the debate always comes back to coal and moving away from coal. The experts and the climate scientists say that we need to move away from coal and the world does. But we know there's the other debate as well where a lot of people depend on the coal industry and its financial, their financial livelihoods that they get from the industry as well. And we know the Deputy PM and leader of the Nationals Party, Barnaby Joyce, spoke out today referencing this, that the global energy crunch that is occurring in Europe because the world is moving away from fossil fuels, which is in fact a fair argument. We do rely heavily on the fossil fuel sector for energy. Does this relate to Australia's argument though?
Yeah, yes, Holly. Well, I did see the comments made by Barnaby Joyce, and he was really trying to say that the UK is having massive problems at the moment in terms of the prices of fossil gas, which are being used to people's home and for their electricity. Now, that's a big component of what is actually runs the energy system in the UK, where here it's a relatively small amount. So it's a very different situation. That being said, the transition away from coal and coal-fired power stations and fossil gas is happening around the world. Just the last week, Germany announced that it's bringing forward its date to get out of coal power to 2030. And that's what Matt Kean was actually talking about a couple of weeks ago. Now, the real problem is, though, that whilst these governments are making some commitments in this area and there's massive change happening, we need to think carefully and help those communities make this transition. And I heard the Deputy Mayor of Lithgow during the week also talking about that they're not being thought about. And they're in, I think, National Party home territory. And they need assistance to help a smooth transition, a just transition, one that looks after the workers and the communities. Now, the Smart Energy Council has thousands of members, from the very big companies like CWP Global to the small local installers putting solar panels. Now, what does this uncertainty in terms of climate policy and the opportunity that it presents to businesses, large and small?
Well, this is the greatest economic opportunity of a generation. We know that solar and wind are now the cheapest way to generate electricity. And that's why these companies are just growing at such a massive rate. You know, in our industry, it's not uncommon for companies to be less than 10 years old and to employ more than 2,000 people. So, solar and wind are going to drive the electrification of everything in our economy. They're going to drive the electrification of transportation. So we're going to abolish, coal-fired electricity. We're going to abolish gas to people's homes. We're going to abolish petrol in people's cars. And that's just the starting point. So a massive transformation underway. It's being driven by economics, and it's because renewables are the cheapest form of generation. So, companies see the massive economic opportunity, and that's why they're pouring into this space.
Scott, I'm also keen to get your thoughts on this as well. What does this mean for communities, including coal regions right across Australia?
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, that we're seeing coal-fired power stations closing, and that's because the parent companies are already taking action. We saw Hazelwood Power Station close just in the last couple of years, and this is having a massive impact on local businesses and local communities. Now, this is going to continue to happen, and whilst there's dates of 2048 for some of the power stations up and down the east coast of Australia, I think that that's going to be, they're going to close much sooner. So what we need to make sure is we have really good and comprehensive transition plans. We need to have plans to make sure that we can have workers working in new jobs, high value jobs, which is where green steel and those sorts of things come in. And we also need plans for the communities, the local councils, the local other businesses, the hairdressers, the newsagents, and those things. We need to be able to help them move so that they can embrace these new technologies like green steel, like solar power in massive scale, like green ammonia. Those sorts of things are what we need to be focused on.
I really like the point you've made there, Scott, about referencing the people who do rely on these coal towns, because that is definitely a part of this conversation, and we can't just pull away from coal and get rid of it. We need to have that transition plan, so I really like that point that you've made there. John, could you tell me a little bit about your online Global Race to Zero Summit, which I'm very pleased to announce that TICA is an event partner and we'll be giving a wrap on each day's highlights and a follow-up special next week as well. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, Holly, we're super excited, and thank you very much for TICA for swinging behind this important event. So we've got some great speakers. It's being held on Wednesday evening from 5 p.m. until 8 p.m, and then all day Thursday, a marathon sitting from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. To kick us off, we've got former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull speaking, and then a range of global leaders. So we've got ambassadors from the US, from the UK, Italy, Denmark, and France. Actually, the French ambassador, for the first time from returning to Australia, is going to speak publicly on this issue, and we're going to hear, of course, the French were behind the Paris Climate Accord. It'll be interesting to what comments he's got about the Australian government's position to date. We've got global scientific leaders, people like Johan Rostrom and Michael E. Mann, who are really the preeminent scientists in their field around climate science. We've got former Australian leaders like former Foreign Minister Bob Carr. We've got media personalities, people like Elise Morgan from ABC The Business, Joe Hildebrand from News Limited. We've got activists and climate specialists. So people like Julia Zamero is coming in. We've got captains of industry, so the CEOs of Lendlease, of Hester, of Australian Ethical. We have speakers really from every sector of the economy, and they have a united message, and the message is that Australia needs to take bold action on climate. The good news is that the event is entirely free of charge. It's being broadcast freely online, and people can join at smartenergy.org.au. So just register at smartenergy.org.au. Like I say, a global lineup of really fantastic speakers. It'll cover Wednesday evening and all day Thursday, and I think it could not be more timely than happening right now.
Now, what are you trying to actually, obviously it's pretty obvious, but I just want you to delve into it a little bit further for us, what you're trying to achieve from the summit and the importance of having all of those different global perspectives as well. You mentioned there'll be people from right around the world.
Yeah, we've got people from India, from China, from South Korea, from Germany, from the US, from the UK, from Italy, literally from around the world, from Chile. And really what this is saying the world is watching. Australia is part of a global community. And there are global forces at play that won't be decided in the National Party room. There are things like border carbon adjustment tariffs. So these are new taxes that places like Europe will put on high carbon products coming into that jurisdiction. The US is looking at this. China is looking at this. This is a global movement. And so our trading partners, our security partners, and the members of the international community want to see Australia take strong action. We really have been kidding ourselves that we can just be a bit like the tobacco industry of the 1970s. They knew that smoking killed you, and yet they did nothing about it. So Australia's a bit like that with our coal exports. The world wants us, needs us, is imploring us to move. Even the Queen is imploring Australia to move. So really the message is that, the world is watching. The world will pass a verdict on what Australia does, and this has real implications for our economic security and for our long-term prosperity as a country.
And I think some welcome news this week as well we must touch on is that Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison will in fact be travelling over to COP26 at the in Glasgow in November at the Climate Summit, which I think is very welcome news and definitely is a step in the right direction, I say. Now, John, I wanted to ask you as well, you've been in the climate wars for over a decade now. What keeps you strong and fighting and motivated towards this goal?
Well, for me, I've been talking for a decade about the fantastic economic opportunities, employment opportunities, investment opportunities in embracing a renewables future. That is inevitable, and Australia is so well placed with some of the best renewable energy resources anywhere in the world, some of the best brains, researchers and scientists, some of the best entrepreneurs and business people in the finance community and beyond. So we have all of the elements to be a genuine global economic superpower when it comes to renewable energy. Instead of the Middle East being the centre of energy prosperity globally, we have the opportunity to capture that and make this country the centre of that economic prosperity, to attract the high intensity industries to Australia, steel making, aluminium making, green hydrogen production, and powering it all with our fantastic Australian sunshine and wind. So what gets me up is that this is inevitable, and even the small wins we have to save things like the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Well, not a small thing, a big thing, to save the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, as this Morrison government has tried time and again to close those things down, give me heart. And I'm just so pleased that now it has a broad momentum. People see this opportunity and are flocking behind the opportunity that it presents all of us.
Lovely to have your company, John. Thank you. Very powerful words to finish off. And we will obviously be keeping our audience up to date with the summit that is occurring, and we'll be keeping in touch with you as well, John. Thank you so much for coming on today to speak about this. It was lovely to have your company, and Scott, as always.
Thank you, John, too.
Thank you.
And that is all we have time for today on Ticker Climate. Thank you for your time today. Remember, you can head to tickeroriginals.co for all sorts of discussions from climate to travel and crypto and more. My name's Holly Stearns. Thank you for your company.